This episode is brought to you by American Rheinmetall, driving the future of combat vehicles with critical innovation and U.S. industry partnerships, delivering unmatched capability to the warfighter.
I'm Ben Watson, and welcome to Defense One Radio. Patrick Tucker is Defense One's science and tech editor, and he recently returned from a trip to Alabama's largest city, Huntsville, for the 2025 Space and Missile Defense Symposium. It's another one of these defense conferences featuring thousands of experts and military officers and defense industry folks from around the world. We cover several of these conferences on our podcast each year. This year's Huntsville conference had a decidedly different theme from years past, and an entirely different attitude toward outsiders and members of the media. So Patrick, how was your Huntsville trip in August, the Deep South in August? And before we get going too much into the main topic of the show, what non-symposium things did you do while you were there?
Yes, August in Huntsville, Alabama. Some of the best humidity I think I've experienced in the United States. Just mouth-watering. The people of Huntsville are very nice. Very nice, very easy to talk to, very friendly and warm. I did have much barbecue and glad that I did it.
This year's Space and Missile Defense Symposium, it comes at a time when missile defense is about to get its biggest financial boost since the 1980s, as far as I understand, thanks to this ambitious program that the Trump administration is pushing, called Golden Dome. It's being referred to as a successor to President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, or Star Wars, in part because it's inspired by Israel's Iron Dome, which is where the Golden Dome name comes from. But the Iron Dome system, of course, was far less ambitious and still quite effective, but it wasn't intended for like ballistic missiles, which is what Trump wants to use it for. In particular, I think they're kind of looking at North Korea, maybe China. They're probably not looking at Russia, but others in the defense industry probably are. And so this idea kind of picks up where Reagan's left off. And that idea from the 80s never really came to fruition for several reasons. We discussed some of those in an old episode on war and space. But those reasons include things like crazy costs, but more to the point, I think, technological limitations, which is to say it couldn't even work with the technology of Reagan's time. Jeffrey Lewis has talked to us about that. Even former and, RIP, former Pentagon Chief Ash Carter had talked to us about that on this podcast. But Trump's Pentagon thinks this idea can work. And they've already greenlit about $25 billion in a Republican-led Congress to get it started. And from what I understand, too, Trump says it can be ready by 2028. So, Patrick, lots of ground to cover with this system, with this symposium that was kind of about this system. And there's a bit of a twist as we get into it here in a minute. But I'm curious. I'm really genuinely curious. Why is the idea of a North American missile defense shield allegedly feasible today, whereas it was not at all previously feasible? What's different?
Well, I think that one of the main things that are different is that now we have a way to mass produce satellites much more cheaply, and also AI guidance. AI autonomy has presented a new kind of vector to create something that a Star Wars program originally had as a concept, and that's going to be key to this. It's one of the most interesting parts. It's the part that I think encourages or inspires the most public curiosity and discussion. It's the real sort of physics breakthrough thing behind this. At the core of this is what are called space-based interceptors. So that is a fancy term that sort of technological folks use in the Pentagon and in the field generally, but it means a satellite that can kill a missile, shooting something from satellites to the Earth to kill missiles. Which is a thing that no one has ever done and is sort of nightmarish when you think about it. And yet at the same time, so is being vulnerable to Russian or Chinese or really any large-scale missile attack also sort of terrifying, especially in the era of drones. So what makes space-based interceptors feasible now in a way that they weren't is all the different ways that you can think about doing space-based intercept that were sort of impossible before. The 80s programs looked at a bunch of different schemes, but one of the key ones was satellites that could shoot lasers. So shooting lasers at the Earth to destroy missiles, particularly when they're in their boost phase. And the boost phase is when the missile is first lifting off. That creates a large plume of heat. There are satellites, the space-based infrared reconnaissance system, or SIMRs, been around for a long time, very expensive satellites. They sit up in geo-Earth orbit, and as soon as there's a big hot plume, the thermal sensors pick up that plume, and you know that there is a missile that's launching off. The thing about shooting at the Earth with lasers in space, you can collect energy in space far more efficiently than you can on Earth from the sun. So solar power in space is 10 times more efficient than it is on Earth because there's less particulate matter in the air to interfere with that collection. But you still need like a crazy amount of power to have a laser beam coming from a satellite that's going to destroy a missile. They're still looking at directed energy for this. But one of the key things that enables this now is how much cheaper it is to build satellites, and the concept of developing satellites that instead of shooting missiles, or excuse me, instead of shooting lasers, or another concept is shooting little missiles at the missile, you can have a satellite that itself becomes like a little missile, and that rockets towards the thing that's lifting off. And so that opens this up in sort of a new way. So there's just been a lot of development in terms of space-based tracking, in terms of the costs of satellites going down, the costs of launch going down. It was always like physically possible to do this. It was just seen as outrageously impractical. And no one was sure how to get a laser beam in space that would have the power to do this thing. When you look across like a distribution level, then it becomes a lot more feasible. So yes, there is a general agreement. Space-based interceptors are now possible, and this concept now is within the realm of feasibility. Whether or not it is the best way to create a security for the U.S. homeland from missiles, that's something that is under constant discussion. But the thing about Golden Dome is it's emerging, and what we've learned, what I learned from my conversations and from sources within the field and missile defense field, generally space field, and everybody that was running around Huntsville, is that the thing that's going to show up before 2028, the core of it, while the space-based interceptors are kind of a really important, exciting part, the core of it is actually creating new digital interactions between a lot of different missile defense stuff we already have sitting around, but that's run by different services and made by different vendors. So, for instance, SIBRs, as we mentioned, Lockheed Martin, you have the PAC-3 missile system, you have the Aegis missile system. These are things that shoot up with surface to air. You have ground-based mid-course defense, which are little interceptors that shoot mostly out of Alaska, intercept things in the air. And you have THAAD, and you have a wide variety of different radars. So the key of it is actually just going to be linking all those things together in a way that never...
Yeah, like a golden network, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, as you were pointing out, the idea of lasers in space, I was not thinking about this system when I recently rewatched RoboCop, and it's kind of like satirical take on the future, right? It's set in a futuristic year. I'm not even sure if they tell you exactly what the year is, but one of the little side notes in the news that they show you for what's going on in the current events and the narrative of the movie is this Star Wars missile defense shield. Maybe you recall, maybe you don't. One of them, they were talking about how one of the lasers in space accidentally kind of maybe went a little haywire and was just firing at the Earth. and it accidentally attacked a presidential retreat in California or something. And they were like, we're still trying to work out the kinks, basically. And it reminded me of the kind of the way that this system was kind of viewed within maybe skeptics and particular critics of the 80s.
That is not what I take away from RoboCop. That is very funny.
Yeah, right.
I think way like human cyborg like cybernetics, obviously the privatization of important state and civic functions, which is the setting in which the RoboCop emerges. I remember how weird it is that Peter Weller, who's a cop, gets killed, and the police department brings him back to life so he could go back to work. I'm
Right.
like, where's your union, buddy? Come on, man.
Right. No legs. Get back to work, buddy. Yeah, clearly you never worked in Afghanistan, Patrick. No, but there were a lot of people who were really dedicated when they lost a limb. It's like this was their purpose, and if they can just get a fake limb and keep working, then, you haven't removed their purpose entirely. It gets a little
Yeah.
emotional. But that's not exactly what RoboCop was about. But it did allude to this kind of like the potential, I guess, the potential dangers of this sort of a thing when a weapon is in orbit constantly. And from what I understand, we're talking about potentially maybe somewhere around like 2,000 interceptors in orbit. I think that was one scenario that had been dreamed up by, who was this? That was maybe Booz Allen. But the Union of Concerned Scientists, their idea on this reaction to this kind of this whole framework was they thought that we would need a constellation of 16,000 interceptors in order to counter a salvo of, what did they say, 10 ICBMs that are like North Korea's current capabilities. Geez Louise, 16,000 or even 2,000. It still sounds incredible.
Yeah, the North Korean capabilities are like the new Russian highly maneuverable hypersonics.
Not even that yet. This is just North Korea's Hwasong 18s.
Okay. It's so like we have ground-based mid-course defense, and that's good for like independently taking out the predictable conventional ballistic missiles of the type that North Korea has and that Iran sort of seeks to have at one point, but although certainly probably not anymore. And the thing is that you need maybe two of those to successfully engage like one missile. Like you got about a higher than 50% shot. It's like a 70% percentile now
with the mid-course
system.
Yeah,
you need more. And this is the main problem or critique of this entire space-based missile defense interceptor thing, is that you're going to need more interceptors than there are missiles, especially when you move into something like highly maneuverable ones, the ones that Russia's actually used in combat and that China has developed. So the economics never really scale. This is something that Todd Harrison has brought up for a long time. That while all of this is now feasible in a way that it never was before, it's still always going to be cheaper to make missiles that from the ground, even highly maneuverable hypersonic ones, the new ones, than it is to make space-based interceptors that in sufficient number to shoot them down. It depends on which type of missile. If you're talking about conventional intercontinental ballistic missile, then that's one thing. The new highly maneuverable ones on a unit cost are going to be more expensive, obviously, than a satellite. But the economics still never scale. It's always going to be cheaper to make missiles than it is to make interceptors in space. So however many show up, 2,000, 3,000, 16,000 in space, the adversary can just make more than that. And so it doesn't quite like work the way you think. But at the same time, that's if you're super reliant on the space-based interceptor layer. If you've got a lot of other layers going on, and that's the main point of this, the space-based interceptor layer is kind of the last call. You've got all these other different missile defense things that already exist, and that's going to be like scaling up the effectiveness of them. That's the key to the thing actually working.
Just having this discussion on this particular question with you, and it touches on the scalability of it and the fact that a maneuverable warhead could thwart a significant portion of this system that we're aware of. Makes me wonder, is maybe, do you think that's possibly why, because we're in hypothetical land, do you think that's possibly why the Pentagon was like, we need to stop talking about this in public? partly why. Surely you could just say, national defense, we don't need to tell everybody. But I think it feels as though the discussions get pretty tricky, but you would have a window into those discussions. So
It's always hard to say exactly what motivates a fatwa like this. But the point is that it failed. Like the clampdown actually just increased the level of interest that the press had in this thing. And to be clear, so what happened was there's the Space Missile Defense Symposium. Days before, the Defense Secretary's office sent out a kind of memo saying that no officials can talk to the press or in the open section of the conference about the Golden Dome, even though Golden Dome was like in the name of the thing. Like, this is the reason people are coming to this thing this year. This is the future of missile defense. You're going to have a Golden Dome conference where in the open portions, no one can talk about the Golden Dome. In the closed portions, and here's the key thing, this was a not a classified section. Like this is not a classified event. If it was a classified event, no one's supposed to be talking about it. What instead you have is like 3,000 people from industry showing up at an event that is non-classified, and they well, they'll be sort of yelled at potentially. They might incur wrath, and some folks have. There is no legal reason for them not to be able to talk about the things that they are there, and everything has actually been slated for public distribution. It's distro A. So saying that we're going to have a non-classified event about the most ambitious and expensive military defense program probably ever it'll turn out to be, and we're not going to talk to the press about it. This might be a function of just the short staffing that exists in the PAO shop at OSD right now. It might be a function of that. It might be a kind of like more belligerence aimed at the press, even though this is, in theory, an opportunity to tell the message, like to go out and speak to folks about something important that the Defense Department is building, as opposed to having sort of like Pentagon briefing room fights with reporters about someone's use of Signal app. So it didn't work is the main thing, like trying to prohibit anybody from talking about this, again, in an unclassified way without revealing kind of core components that would actually risk national security. It just sort of failed miserably. But I think that one of the things that came out of that is that it sort of created a situation. This is one of many of the criticisms that I heard from everybody that I talked to across industry, across government, and they all basically said the same thing, that they want to talk about this stuff to the press, and they know how to do it in a way that's responsible. And it kind of aligns with recent other Pentagon kind of communications directives where, for instance, they were going to review every event anyone from the Department of Defense was going to speak at before allowing them to speak at an event. And this sort of falls in line with that idea. The thinking being that we're only going to appear at events that we feel represent or mirror the agenda of Donald Trump and his particular vision, as opposed to public servants speaking to the public. And everyone that I talked to said that this didn't fly very well for a number of reasons. First of all, OSD at this time does not have the staff to well review all of the invitations that they get that might be useful. And B, it's pretty condescending to tell a four-star general or even someone at a lower rank in whom we trust the capability and the authority to go to freaking war, that they can't talk to the public about what they do. Like, they can go to war. They know how to talk to a person in the press about what they do. They're pretty good at it. Sometimes too good. So it was a mysterious decision, and just increased the amount of attention and interest that everyone had in what the heck they said in this briefing where reporters were barred. But I was able to talk to a bunch of people that went there and get their comments and their observations on background. And we also got I viewed slides, basically the entire slide deck of the presentation, as did Reuters. It did work.
American Rheinmetall is leading the development of advanced combat vehicles designed for the future fight. With a focus on innovation and strong partnerships with U.S. suppliers, the company is strengthening the U.S. defense industrial base. Their work supports thousands of jobs, drives advanced technology, and delivers unmatched capability to the warfighter. With a long-term commitment to national security, readiness, and American industrial strength.
I wanted to ask you about a little bit more about the satellite aspect of this, so far as we know it. So it's good you got to see that slide deck. I know the Pentagon released like a big one-page illustration as well a couple of months ago, showing how it looks in cartoon world. One of the questions I had about the satellite, this facet of it, is because of what you reported, I think August 5th, the headline for your report then was Lockheed Martin aims to test a missile-killing satellite by 2028. Do you think that feeds into this system? It would seem to on its face, A, and then B, do you, like, who else is doing missile-killing satellites? Is anybody yet?
Yeah. So the thing about the space-based interceptors is, in terms of how this is all going to work out, there was a program that was part of the original Star Wars effort, and one of the prototypes, it was called Brilliant Pebbles, and it was a kind of joint Lockheed Martin and Northrop program, and that's the closest that we kind of came. So what they said is that they are looking to actually test a space-based interceptor by 2028. And they'll probably have to partner with a bunch of companies to be able to do that, but they do feel it's within their realm of possibility for them. And that'd be the first time anybody had seen this thing, a satellite that shoots something at the Earth to destroy missiles. We have Russian weapons in space, like this nuclear, basically this big nuclear bomb thing that they've put into space that could really affect the spectrum out there, affect satellite communications, GPS, things like that. And you have Chinese satellites that do on-orbit maintenance, which is basically like satellites with little arms and things that can grab other satellites, which is actually, I think, an episode in the Space Force TV show now, God rest its soul. But satellites that shoot at the Earth, no one has ever done that. Lockheed came the closest, and they're trying to position themselves as kind of in the lead on this because they have a huge chunk of the current missile defense capabilities that we use, but they don't have all of it. There's also Northrop, there's also Boeing, there's Raytheon, just a ton of different companies. And now, because of all of the kind of confusion about what's going on, and this sort of 60-day period where everyone is waiting to see what the kind of formal architecture is going to be that comes out of General Michael Gutlin's office, you're seeing a lot of different companies that make space-based things pushing out their message that, hey, here's how you do it, here's what this should look like. And that's responding to a vacuum of communications that's created by this OSD kind of reluctance to actually engage with the public.
I think, what is it, the first test isn't expected of the Golden Dome system until, like, was it Q3 or Q4 2028, I think, right? Yep. That lines up about with Lockheed's demonstration in 2028. Well, you alluded to other companies. What do you understand about Anduril's possible role and Palantir as well? Because those are the other two that get thrown around a lot so far with the discussions of who's going to get the money.
Well, and who else is thrown around quite a lot is SpaceX,
right,
of course. Right. And SpaceX didn't have a big presence at this thing, which is sort of surprising, but they also don't need to. So there's a lot of concern right now about how much of this Golden Dome thing is going to be SpaceX. SpaceX is the leader in the entire world, and as far as we know, in the entire universe, in terms of affordability of launch. They launched more and cheaper than anybody else, almost by a factor of two.
Do you think their advancements are kind of how this discussion got propelled? Because they were like, look at the lowered cost compared to previously? Or am I just being overreacting towards their accomplishments?
The affordability of launch now is a huge factor in the feasibility of this. And the affordability of launch, when we talk about what that means, we're talking about SpaceX, because in terms of the launching a large number of satellites cheaply, that they own that. They own that. You have rocket labs and different things that can launch that are a little bit cheaper than SpaceX to launch very small numbers of satellites, but in terms of launching a bunch, it's SpaceX. And also, SpaceX runs the show in terms of the cost of developing a proliferated satellite constellation. They've already done this for Starlink. So you've got that crossover between that they've already set up on an industrial scale to cheaply make satellites. They have then onboarding things like guidance or AI or whatever. That's not hard to do. And you've got you kind of run the market in terms of launch. But there's and this has been building for years, even before the sort of social relationship fallout between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. There's a lot of wariness about kind of one point of failure and giving the whole thing to SpaceX. But what emerged from, and this is sort of, again, why refusal to allow press into this event was such a mystery, because what emerged and what is emerging from the discussions about what Golden Dome is or should be is an understanding that is uniform across both the folks that are running this program, this effort at DoD and all of industry, that actually you're going to need a ton of different industry partners in order to make this work. And what we're seeing developing, and what Lockheed has said, and Northrop and others, is that, hey, there's a lot of alternatives to launch, but we'll work with anybody that has to be worked with in order to make this work. One of the things that I'm told by sources is that in a way that hasn't happened since the 80s, Northrop, Lockheed, and other kind of big players that normally work in very separate lanes are coming up with kind of a joint plan. So back to like Anduril and Palantir. Palantir runs, there's a lot of AI that they employ and continue to work with. Anduril is moving very quickly into different types of missile platforms, and they also have it's called Lattice. They also have a great big sort of mission planning AI tool that they're trying to put more and more places. So they have things that can compete with Lockheed and with Northrop in terms of selling into this. What the overall thing's going to look like is, instead of it winnowing down to just like one or two players, you're seeing the big players come together, and they're kind of putting forward their proposal as a joint team for what this architecture is going to kind of be. It will certainly include SpaceX, but it's good also because you need to increase the number of missiles that you have. You need to increase the number of different types of systems that you have. You need to increase and buy more AI to string together, like AI software that is kind of specific for some of these systems, and integrating data like from Battlefield or whatever. There's room for everybody, and so the only question is, how big of a piece is everybody going to get? But this pie is also going to continue to grow too. Like, you don't like make this thing and set it and forget it. As adversaries continue to advance their own technologies, make more missiles, and move towards potentially fractal orbital systems, basically like things in space, or missiles that burst into a bunch of different types of missiles, or sit in low Earth orbit and shoot stuff at the Earth instead of at missiles, at targets. You're going to need to innovate this more and buy more things, and potentially from more vendors.
Yeah. I was just looking at the solicitation, I think, that was issued in late May of this year, and they've got 151 billion for this project over 10 years.
The Congressional Budget Office looked at it like a 10-year estimate, and it gets to be almost like $1 trillion. It gets to be something like 600 billion. And that's a May 5th, 2025 assessment from CBO. So, yeah, you've got that initial 161 billion that was put out, but as you go forward, and yeah, have to deal with satellites that are falling out of orbit and burning up on reentry, as you have to deal with upgrades, and bringing in new drones, new radars, new things to make this thing continually capable in the face of ever-evolving threat. It gets up there. You're going to have potentially 831 billion is what I'm reading right now from that May 5th CBO estimate, and that's over like 10 years. So yeah, this is a cash cow. This is a lot of money.
Huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's plenty big. Um, so uh, and at the same time, it does respond to an actual situation, an actual threat, which is like we said, new highly maneuverable hypersonics that basically defeat known missile intercept systems that exist today. Lots of new drone threats, and the continued decrease in the cost of producing even conventional missiles by China, which has a big advantage in terms of missiles when you're looking specifically at the Pacific.
Yeah. I see. I
And
see.
what does that mean for the U.S. and the homeland, and why we need this thing to defend the continental United States? Um, well, if you are defending against large salvos of missiles in the event of a major conflict uh, within the continental United States, then you're going to have be pulling resources to potentially deal with them closer to where you're engaging in conflict with China. So this does respond to a proliferation of threats that are very real. Like, and those are going to continue to proliferate. Those Chinese and Russian capabilities are going to get better, and smaller capabilities from countries like North Korea or pick your next adversary. They're going to also increase in capability and do so exponentially as well.
Yeah, yeah. You remind me of an Indian quote from Jeffrey Lewis in talking to NPR. He was saying he predicts we will end up with vastly larger Russian and Chinese nuclear forces. We will end up with the Russians and the Chinese having all kinds of crazy sci-fi weapons, he said.
You don't want a satellite missile killing gap.
Right, right. That's true. That's true. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said in short, we'll end up spending tens, if not hundreds of billions to be in, at best, the same place we are today, and most likely a much worse place. He tends toward the cynical. However, he documents things very well. I like his arguments. He's even written a book on hypothetical nuclear attack on the United States by North Korea and how that would, you know, punch through current U.S. defenses, like you pointed out, maybe kind of concentrated in, what is it, Fort Greely, Alaska or something.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that's sort of interesting to talk about here, in addition to the sort of consortium that's unfolding, where basically the missile defense people are figuring out for themselves and are then going to kind of tell the Defense Department how to architecture this thing. The other thing that I think is really interesting about it is the role that AI plays kind of across the board here in enabling this thing to happen. So this is going to involve new forms of AI that potentially are on satellites themselves, which is a thing that's very hard to do just because of the laws of thermodynamics and the amount of CPU you can squeeze onto a thing, and especially given all the cooling and et cetera, you need to run a CPU. So AI like empowered satellites, you're going to have AI at the level of coordinating all of these different types of like missile systems and all across these services to make like a hyper reactive, sensitive layer. Um, and be aware of incoming large missile threats and be able to direct to singular sort of points of contact, but also potentially as far as away as anybody you need. Like what's going to happen next? It sounds a little bit, if you want to take a worst case scenario, like the Whopper from War Games.
Right.
That's kind of
Yeah.
what Whopper was.
Hmm.
But this one involving like it is sort of that, but at the same time, it's the only thing that's going to enable you to really understand all like what all of these different sensors and satellites and things are seeing in terms of potential missile threats, and do so as quickly as possible so that you can react. And it's going to tell you how to potentially react. Like it's huge and it's a little bit scary, but it's also again keeping up with a threat that is very real. And I think that I didn't fully appreciate the degree to which the Golden Dome, or which we can just sort of put that aside for a second and think about like the future of effective missile defense involves sometimes like people on the ground, people collecting intelligence as far left of launch as you can. That's
Right.
going to increase your chances of intercept. So the more data and intelligence that you can get about, hey, the they're putting the centrifuge in now in the underground bunker, according to my guy who works there on weekends, who I bought, dinner for or whatever, or, according to what we can pick up with this intelligence thing. Like that's actually a more important part of the future of missile defense than I think people realize.
That's true.
And it's one reason why you see an emerging trifecta between special operations forces, cyber, and space, because these folks are going to play a role in Golden Dome. Because, like I said, the further left of field you get, the more effective is going to be your response or your awareness of how many missiles you might be dealing with, what they are, and where they might be coming from. And the other thing that I think is sort of really important here that gets lost a lot, and that kind of OSD officials don't super want to talk about right now, but it's still obviously pretty key. Your partners and allies, so not ticking off everybody in Europe, is going to be an important part of actually collecting the requisite intelligence on this thing, and also potentially having good intercept reactions, because you've got the Aegeus in Romania, you've got things in different parts of Asia. And that's, again, like that, all that stuff on the ground. And the willingness of a partner nation to host that stuff, that's going to be the most effective, like one of the most effective parts of this. It's a real necessary ingredient. But I think something that also occurred to me when I was talking to one of my sources about this thing, and if you're skeptical of what will be at some point an $800 billion missile defense shield, that at best is just keeping pace in an arms race that's ever escalating, versus is something else. One of the things that this does enable is a real breakthrough in the space-based services economy that would also have like civilian ramifications. Right. So out of this effort, in addition to established players probably getting new revenue to upgrade all of their all the stuff that they make that does defend against missiles, you're also going to have new players, particularly people that do software related to satellites, software in space, that do space servicing, for instance. This is going to give a big boost to that new economy, and that's part of the reason for this too. Is that you're helping to create an actual industry around space-based services, because right now, no one like Walmart and you and I don't buy anything related to space. Sometimes we buy maybe communications that come down to us as like little consumers, but we're not paying for rocket launches directly, and this whole effort is going to recreate the economic landscape around space itself within the United States.
That is quite a prospect to ponder. A whole new market.
RoboCop as a good movie about Star Wars is a strange idea to me. Why not go with Real Genius? Have you seen Real Genius?
No, what's this? Tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, this is a great movie. Everybody's got to watch this movie. So it's a 1980s movie. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the year. And Val Kilmer is this. Let's see here, Real Genius. He is a laser expert in the 80s. He is like a college student. It was made in 1985, and it is about this like young Harvard like playboy genius kid who's played by Val Kilmer, and his little lab at the university are working on a big laser project, and they're trying to figure out how to increase the power to the laser, and it's really there, and get all at the same time all getting into hijinks and having fun, etc. And he doesn't know what the project's about. He just knows that like, hey, he's got a grant and it's a really important grant or whatever. And it turns out that his advisor is basically stealing his work, and the purpose of the laser is the U.S. Air Force wants to make put a laser in space, except which speaks directly to the whole like Star Wars concept, but they're testing it for the purposes of like targeted space-based assassination.
Oh, right.
Which is insane when you think about it, because the way they sell it in this movie is that like, see, we can take out like the president of this adversary country and no one would know it's us. It's like, sucker, who else got the space laser?
They're gonna know. Yeah.
Yeah. Real Genius.
Real Genius,
1985, starring Val Kilmer. Directed by Martha Coolidge.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of this movie. I will look into it. It sounds like a fun little weekend diversion.
It is fun. It is fun. If you want some good 1980s college military laser hijinks, it's great for that. And it's like Val Kilmer's gold in it too. He's super funny, and they play like funny pranks. At one point, they make a little receiver using uh, like sound waves that are targeted, which is a thing that you can also use directed energy for. And they convince somebody that he's hearing God. It's very, very funny, and it's very well directed by Martha Coolidge, who I didn't even know directed it, but was also a great director, and Val Kilmer's gold.
Fascinating. Boy, the '80s, they give us some classics. I mean, I was thinking about Weird Science and how I still, we still are waiting on our women from that. There was
Weird
also
Science, it pisses me off because it's just so outside of science. There's no freaking science in that thing at all. It's so weird.
but you got a great theme song, I
You
think.
do, and you also have Robert Downey Jr. in it.
Oh, I
In a
forgot about that.
Well, yeah,
Bill Paxton going over the top. There was
Oh, I know.
also right, way over the top.
yeah.
Just real briefly before I let you go, you were talking about AI in space, lots of opportunities for that. Of course, it's tempting to be like, what could go wrong putting an AI in space, right? It's not like we don't have a movie for that either. But it also reminds me that there was a development over the last couple of days with Google's AI. And maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. Google's Gemini AI told a Redditor that it's cautiously optimistic about fixing a coding bug, but then it failed repeatedly. Then it called itself an embarrassment to, quote, all possible and impossible universes before it began repeating, I am a disgrace, 86 times in succession.
Yeah, I did see this. I did see this. Yeah,
I hope it doesn't. I hope the AI doesn't get overwhelmed in space trying to track a missile, and then they just start going all emo and depressed and quit.
yeah, yeah. So that is a particular type of AI.
Okay, not missile tracking AI. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Because like missile tracking, that's different.
this is just Reddit AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a large language model, a foundation model. And to be clear, this is a bunch of math. It is not actually feeling embarrassment. It is not actually experiencing all of these things.
I am a disgrace. I am.
Yeah,
a disgrace.
it's not. Yeah, it does not understand grace or disgrace. It is just stringing together probabilities of reaction.
Oh, how comforting.
Yeah, and somehow it's basically replicating what it has statistically absorbed to be a naturalistic human emotional breakdown, but it is not capable of emotions or breakdowns. So
No
don't be
emotions in space.
yeah,
Not for AI.
like be much more worried about the people that own and sell the AIs and how much accountability and public oversight they are receiving, because that is less and less all the time. I'm much more worried about the humans. That's the message behind any zombie movie or apocalypse movie anyway. Is it's always actually just about how bad the humans are. So be better, everyone.
Well,
and you'll have AIs.
Google called Gemini's habit of self-abuse annoying. So one last consideration, by the way. We're talking about defending against this diverse missile threat.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this whole thing we're talking about, Golden Dome, probably not going to do much against a submarine. Or
Yeah. Well, if the submarine is launching, if it's a submarine that's not like the weird nuclear torpedo thing that Russia is inventing, where it's going to do at a submersible level, if it's shooting like a surface to air, even if it's a maneuverable one,
still fair chance of getting it.
yeah, there's still again, we have ground-based interceptors that, as part of a larger sensing architecture, can be made more effective against that threat too. So it's
Okay.
and submarine launch missiles are that is a hard problem. You can get closer. You can get much closer. You can launch them from anywhere in a way that is very difficult to detect. Although now we're getting much better at detecting where submarines are. There's new technologies for that too.
Yeah.
By creating this massive integrated sensing and data layer, yeah, you can increase your odds of intercepting those two, and you don't need space-based lasers for that. You need stuff that's already sitting around. So.
Okay, just sort of thinking, trying to eliminate all possibilities so I can sleep well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else, Patrick, before I let you go? You've been very generous. I appreciate it.
No, I think that's it for now. But let's chat again about better like 1980s science movies.
That sounds
And
good.
yeah,
That
and
sounds good.
I mean, everyone should rewatch these things. We watch War Games too because that's a really good. I think remains a really stand-up movie, both about the future of missile defense and missile brakemanship, and AI applied specifically to that. That is, and it's a really actually good, probably the best digestion of AI in an 80s movie, or maybe even a movie of almost all time.
Interesting.
Is War Games? Yeah.
The only way to win is to not play, right?
Only right to win is do not play. Yeah, that's right. That's the truth right there.
All right, Patrick Tucker, Science and Technology Editor for Defense One. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the week.
Hasta.
Adios. Well, that's it for us this episode. Thanks for listening, and until next time.
This episode was sponsored by American Rheinmetall, supporting American jobs, advancing technology, and delivering combat-proven capabilities for the next generation of warfighters.